Sit down and grab your lunch. It's time for the Bolts Brown Bag, the only show where you make the call.
Well, making 4 straight losses for the San Diego Chargers, but don't go anywhere because we got a lot to talk about today on Bolts Brown Bag, only at 10news.com. Glad to have you with us out here on the patio here at 10 News in our cafe, along with John Gennaro from the Mighty 1090 and boltsfromtheblue.com. I'm Ben Higgins. The season is pretty much lost. Let's just acknowledge that right now. The Chargers would have to go 7-1 from this point just to get to 9-7, which didn't even get them to the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and that would require them beating the Denver Broncos at least once, beating the Oakland Raiders, who are obviously a better team, beating the Kansas City Chiefs twice, beating the Miami Dolphins, who, despite the fact they lost to the Patriots, are a good team. They're not beating any of these teams.
I mean, it's not, Phillip Rivers will tell you we're not mathematically eliminated. Hey, if you look at the standings right now, 4-3, the Raiders right now are the 5th seed in the AFC. The Jets 4-3 are the 6th seed. So there is a chance 8-8 could sneak in as a wild card if you really want to go with pie in the sky dreams. And I'm sure, Phillip Rivers isn't going to stop playing until they tell him you can't make the playoffs, and he'll still keep playing after that because, well, you get signed up for 16 games each year, and that's what you do. But realistically, we're operating now under the assumption that probably not going to happen. So I threw out the poll question, by the way, right off the top here. If you want to vote, you can do so on the screen right there at 10news.com /BoltsBrownBag. How should the Chargers approach the second half of the 2015 season, which begins next Monday night against the Chicago Bears? 1, try to pull off the miracle and win basically every game and see if you can still make the playoffs. 2, go ahead and start developing some of the younger players. Get them some more playing time with an eye to the future. Work on the guys who are going to be here next year. Stop worrying about the guys who probably aren't going to be. Or the third option, just start shopping for condos in L.A. just to get a head start on the potential move. So those are the 3 choices today on the poll.
And I have a question for you, and this is a hypothetical question that I was telling you I had before we came on here. Because if the Chargers, let's imagine they lose to the Bears, and that makes them 2-7, and now they're really probably mathematically eliminated, season is actually over. At that point, there's really no reason to play Phillip Rivers, right? The only reason to play Phillip Rivers is to try and win the game. When you're mathematically eliminated with 5-6 games left, you're not trying to win the game anymore. At that point, you're just fighting for draft position. So you'd probably want to start Kellen Clemens or whatever. Not my hypothetical question. My hypothetical question is, if you're Tom Telesco, you have a time machine, you can go back to this last draft. This isn't so much a question about Melvin Gordon, but it kind of is. The Titans are on the phone. They want to trade you the number 2 pick for Phillip Rivers. You know Eric Weddle's not coming back. You know Antonio Gates probably isn't coming back. You know Malcolm Floyd's about to retire. You know that even with Phillip Rivers, you're probably rebuilding this entire team in a year or 2. Knowing what you know now, do you make that trade? Take your heart out of it for a second. Do you make that trade, send Phillip Rivers to the Titans, and accept Marcus Mariota as your new franchise quarterback of a rebuilding team?
I don't, and I'm taking my heart out of it. But here's why, even if I'm Tom Telesco, thinking objectively, I don't do it. First of all, Phillip Rivers is having an incredible season. And that's one of the things I want to get into, the numbers that Phillip Rivers is putting up. But if you are going to move to Los Angeles, I really think you want to have an established quarterback as your team.
Why are you factoring Los Angeles into this decision?
Phillip Rivers has got some good years left still. I mean, if he's playing at this level right now, you got to figure he's got 2 or 3 more years where you're going for it. You're trying to get to the playoffs with the San Diego Chargers roster. You're retooling. Sure, you're taking pieces, you're moving them around, but Phillip Rivers is your constant now for the next, still 3 or 4 years, whatever the rest of his career is, especially now that he signed the contract extension. And I know this would have been before the contract extension. Yes. He would have never gotten it, and you would have made the trade. Also, Marcus Mariota is hurt, and I haven't seen enough to make me think, oh, man, they missed on a sure thing in Marcus Mariota with the Tennessee Titans so far.
I'm looking at the current roster. I'm looking at the holes that are going to exist in the upcoming offseason. You're going to have to replace Gates, and you can't do it with Green because he's also a free agent. And you're going to have to replace Weddle, which is probably a draft pick, but you're going to have to replace Malcolm Floyd. You can't do it with anyone on the roster. Dontrell Inman's not stepping up to be the number 1, number 2 wide receiver. Stevie Johnson, maybe. Do you want to rely on him? Has he proved to be reliable with the San Diego Chargers? There's so many holes in this roster.
But are we worried about the pass catchers on this team? I mean, Phillip Rivers has shown it doesn't really matter who he throws the ball to. He's going to get his yards. He's going to move the offense. He's going to score points.
So think of him like Tom Brady. Never get him a receiver. Although Tom Brady's got Gronk.
He does have Gronk, and Rivers has had Gates.
And he would have Allen.
You know, Rivers throws the ball to Inman. He's thrown it to Ajira Tutu. He's thrown it to all kinds of players over his career and pretty consistently put up the numbers. Sure, it's great to have a playmaker or two. Keenan Allen is going to be around 67 catches for Keenan Allen.
He's having a great year.
Through 8 games. That's the second most in NFL history, tied with Rod Smith behind only Marvin Harrison, I believe, through the midway point in the season.
And he's left the last few games with
injuries. And really, I mean, he's left a lot of potential catches out there because he hasn't even stayed on the field. And then Phillip Rivers with 1,500 yards, just over 1,500 yards the last 4 games, all of them losses. But he's on pace for over 5,500, which would break Peyton Manning's single-season NFL passing yardage record.
And he may do it on a team that has 3 wins.
Well, I mean, he's not going to do it. If the Chargers somehow go on a winning streak, the chance that Phillip Rivers breaks the passing record is almost 0.
Right.
Because if they're winning, they're not throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game. Because usually the way the Chargers win is they're balanced, they've got a lead, they're running clock. When they're behind, like they've gotten behind in almost every game this season, they're throwing the ball like crazy. They have to come back. Phillip Rivers has to throw the ball a ton. And that's what, they've lost 4 games, but that's why Phillip Rivers is averaged 365 yards passing during the losing streak. 10 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions.
And,
crazy numbers for considering the league is supposed to be about the quarterback.
And he's playing great.
And you want to trade him, or you want to go back in time and trade him.
It was just a hypothetical question. I didn't say that I wanted to, but you're looking at this upcoming offseason as a retooling. I'm looking at it saying you may need to rebuild. But if you had a time machine and you were Tom Telesco, let's ignore the trade. You're definitely not drafting. You're definitely not trading up and drafting Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon was either thrown to or given the ball to carry 25 times in this game. Do you know how many yards he got?
About 70.
61.
Yeah.
That is a little bit more than 2 yards per opportunity. Plus, he fumbled. He landed on it, he got it back, but he fumbled the ball. This is not a good player. I'm not saying he's a bust. I'm not saying he will never be a good player. But right now, Melvin Gordon is one of the worst playmakers on the entire Chargers roster. So, obviously, if you have a time machine, you're not trading up and you're not drafting him in the first round, right?
Well, yeah. Phillip Rivers, though, thinks differently than you and I do about this situation because we're obviously talking about the Chargers in the past tense, at least this season. He's not ready to give it up. In fact, if you ask Phillip Rivers, he'd tell you, I don't think this team is as bad as y'all think it is. And he'd probably say y'all when he was doing it as well. In fact, after the game last night or yesterday in Baltimore, Phillip talked about the agony of these last 4 weeks.
I'm not one that'd say you'd rather get beat 35-0 every week than have close games because I can't imagine how that would feel. But I think it does make it tougher when it's like this because you know you could have and you know you're good enough, but you didn't do it. And there's no easy solution because we can't take any of them back.
Are you good enough if you didn't do it? I
No,
mean,
no.
He went on to say, okay, there was the inches against the Steelers, and there's the, a third down against the Ravens that they could have kept him off the field, and they didn't get it done against the Ravens, and the Packers, the last play, if they could have gotten a touchdown, they could have won that one as well. He still thinks this could very easily be a 5-3 team at the break with the lead in the wild card race and looking straight ahead at the playoffs.
You know what? In a certain way, he's not wrong because good teams stay healthy. Good teams practice hard. Good teams don't give up stupid penalties. Good teams don't give up 3rd and long. Yes, it appears that the Chargers are inches away from victory week in and week out. And the reason they're losing is not necessarily because the other team is significantly more talented than they are. It's because the Chargers are stupid. They beat themselves every week. And if Philip Rivers says, all we have to do is stop beating ourselves and we'll win games, he's right. However, this roster, this coaching staff has not shown an ability to avoid those mistakes.
All right, with that in mind, on Twitter this morning, I promised to call for a change today on Bolts Brown Bag, calling on the Chargers to make a change.
Didn't we fire someone last week?
We did fire. I'm not necessarily saying you fire someone this week. This is what has to be done, though, in my mind, if you're going to move forward. And if Mike McCoy has any hope of sticking around, he has to make a change.
Can I take a guess on what your change is?
I'm not specifying what my change is.
All right.
He just has to do something different.
Do something.
I am so tired of every single week the same. We got to work harder. We got to execute better. We got to, it's the same thing every week. But he never really changes his behavior at all. He never adjusts his strategy. He doesn't adjust his plan. He doesn't adjust what he says to, I think, the players as well as the media at the end of the game. It's the same every single week. It's not working. You're 2-6. I mean, I hate being someone who comes from sports talk radio.
Mm-hmm.
I hate this quote more than any other quote that I hear because it just gets pounded by callers over and over again.
Okay.
It's the old Einstein one. What is the how's it go? The doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of it. But
awful quote.
In this respect, there's at least some truth to any quote like that.
Sure.
And he just keeps doing the same thing over and over again. So the Chargers, now at the midway point of the season, make some sort of change. Come out and announce it. If you want to change the special teams coach, we called for that last week, go ahead. You have one punt return yard all season. John, that's like
this. That's about that. That's how much.
This is the entire sum total of the Chargers' punt return yardage.
Through 8 games.
Through 8 games. Not per game, not per punt return. The entire sum total can be represented by the distance between my hands. And they're paying someone, they're paying 11 people, but they're paying their returner almost $2 million. This is it.
Yeah, but you can't. The guy who's making $1.7 million, you can't even show how many punt returns he has yielded because it's negative. He has negative. Jacoby Jones has negative punt return yards. It would be like this, but for 2 yards. It's terrible. He is the worst punt returner in the league. And the crazy thing is, he didn't used to be. And this should be one of the clearest examples of how bad of a coach Mike McCoy is. Because Jacoby Jones was an excellent punt returner on the Houston Texans. He was an excellent punt returner on the Baltimore Ravens. He gets to the San Diego Chargers. He has mysterious injuries that look faked. And all of a sudden he can't do anything in the punt return game. Maybe it's the special teams coach. Maybe it's Mike McCoy. But he doesn't want to play.
But if
Mike
McCoy wants the change to be, okay, we're going to get super aggressive. We're going for it on 4th down. We're not going to be punting. By the way, they punted on 4th and 6, I believe, in opposing territory yesterday. Jacoby Jones also played a big part in that loss by not coming up to fair catch a ball that landed around the 20 and then bounced down into like the 2-3 yard line where the Chargers were pinned, had to punt, and gave up the go-ahead touchdown drive to the Baltimore Ravens. So special teams, again, every single week. I told you it's going to cost them a game. You could claim that this last game was the one where it cost them, but I can't imagine there won't be another one as it goes forward because it's been that bad all season long.
Well, and that was just showing you that it almost doesn't matter who the players are. You had a awful decision by Jacoby Jones, who was obviously very poorly coached in that situation, and then to try and fight their way out of being on their own 3-yard line, the Frank Reich and the Chargers offensive coaches called 3 of the worst play calls I've ever seen. All 3 to Melvin Gordon, who was already struggling and narrowly avoided 2 safeties and then had a wasted play on 3rd down. Across the board, defensive coaching is awful. Offensive coaching is horrid. Special teams coaching is embarrassing. They're not helping their players at all.
And if you don't see that as the head coach and can't make some sort of change in the direction that your team is going right now, then you don't deserve to be the head coach of an NFL team anymore. And if you can't make that change, then the Spanoses need to step in, or Tom Telesco needs to step in and make that change. Because if they don't see it, then there's really no hope for the franchise.
Okay, so what change would you make if you're Mike McCoy?
I don't really care. I don't really care. I think you need to just acknowledge to your players, this isn't working, let's try something different.
Right.
I think just doing that will, at least breathe some new, fresh life into a locker room that's getting really stale under a guy that has a really stale personality.
An incredibly stale personality, and everyone was tired of him 2 years ago, and now it's just sad. When he, and this is why some coaches make it a point to sort of befriend the media, answer their questions, make their job a little easier, so that when they get in a situation like this, when they're obviously overwhelmed, overmatched, and he's trying to blame his players, he's obviously trying to quietly blame the general manager for the talent on the roster, no one's buying it. No one wants to side with him because he's so unlikable.
Now, I'm not saying that injuries haven't been a factor, and yesterday was pretty ridiculous.
Insane.
I mean, it was like every single play, especially in the first half, another member of the Chargers was going down. And even after the game, I've never seen, I guess incredulous is the word to describe Mike McCoy and Philip Rivers talking about what happened to them yesterday in Baltimore.
Just one thing after another. So you just got to keep on adjusting. And that's with special teams, all the substitutions you got to do and change people around, move guys around. And, we did the best we could there. And so, but I've never been, like you've already said, I've never been around anything like it, that many guys going down in a game.
Injuries are crazy. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know that there is anything like it. I know it happens everywhere, but it ain't happened like this anywhere in the league right now. I mean, this is crazy.
Is that the built-in excuse now for the season?
Wah.
I mean, it's bad. It is bad.
It's
the 12 injuries. That's more than 1 out of every 4 players that was on the active roster yesterday was injured during the game.
And
I know it's a rough sport, but it's not a 25% attrition rate sport.
It's
weekly.
It's not, but look at the guy putting the roster together, and look at these players. Manti Te'o, are we surprised he's hurt? Jason Verrett gets hurt during the game. Are we surprised? Orlando Franklin was on the field for a couple of plays. Chris Watt, I think, came in for 1 or 2 plays before he got injured. We shouldn't be surprised. These are injury-prone players. What the Chargers need, and maybe part of it is Mike McCoy, demanding too much toughness from guys, or, and this is my theory, and Dan Cilio backed this up on 1090 this morning, they must not be practicing very hard at all. If they get injured the first play of game action, and we haven't heard one thing about an in-practice injury, not that I'm rooting for an in-practice injury, but if they can't go one play without getting injured at game speed, how are they practicing that they're not getting injured?
I'm not saying that you're wrong, because you may be right, but I could easily make the counter argument. They're practicing way too hard. They're wearing themselves out. They need to be resting more between games, and that would help them stay healthy. You could at least make the counter argument as well that the opposite could be true there. I don't know what's causing all the injuries. I really don't. And, obviously they don't either, or I would hope, do something about it.
I would hope they would do something about it too. The problem is that, and this is the problem with Mike McCoy, and it seems to be a problem with Tom Telesco, and it seems to be a problem with the culture, which we talked about on our podcast last week. And I created a slogan for the San Diego Chargers back when Norv Turner was still here and A.J. Smith was the general manager. I said, everything I hear from this team comes with a sense of faith and arrogance. Faith that it's all going to work out, and arrogance to say, I know better than you. Even if all the evidence is otherwise, I know better than you, it's going to work out. And still, Tom Telesco, Mike McCoy, I know better than you, it's going to work out. And now we're sitting here at 2-6. And can the Chargers even beat the Bears? Can they beat the Bears?
Well, I did hear that both Matt Forte and Eddie Royal could be out for the game with injury, but I don't know. I don't know that they can. All right, let's look at our picks contest. Each week we pick 3 teams. You, me, Chris Ello. We've got not a great week for all of us. By the way,
rough week for me.
Our digital honcho Luke asked me to point out, because he didn't realize this, you can't pick someone else's team. Once they've already been taken, they're off the board.
Right. Who did I pick?
No one did.
Oh,
He
okay.
just didn't realize that. He goes, I didn't realize why you always
okay.
pick different ones.
Gotcha.
So that's why it's all different each week. But Chris did get his Broncos upset pick correct, so he gains a little bit of ground, 23 points. You only got the Bengals at 26. Both of our upset selections, the Giants and the Chargers, lost on field goals as time expired.
The funny thing is I wanted the Giants, and I couldn't pick them because you had picked them.
Yeah.
And you had told me that you were thinking about taking the Chargers. We were both wrong,
and
no
we
matter
should
what.
have taken the Raiders. That would have been the winning pick right there. So
hey, maybe the second best team in the AFC West right now.
So I've got a full 6-point lead, which is the maximum number of points for a week now. Though.
You feeling comfortable?
I at least have a bit of a cushion going into the second half of the season. Not insurmountable by any means.
Faith and arrogance, Ben.
A little bit of a cushion. All right, let's start looking ahead a little bit. because this is a big week on the NFL calendar. I believe tomorrow is the trade deadline in the NFL. It's not like baseball where you expect a flurry of activity, but the Chargers' name has come up a little bit today as a team that you could see, if they really believe 2-6 is out of it, as they probably should, if anyone's interested and is willing to send a draft pick your way, who might not be on the Chargers by the end of the day tomorrow.
Well, and here's the thing, and this is just tying into one theory that I have about this week. This has been the week from hell for Charger fans. Not only did they get embarrassed by the Oakland Raiders and then lose to a 1-6 Baltimore Ravens team, everyone on the team outside of Phillip Rivers is injured, but at the NFL Town Hall meeting at Spreckles Theater, the Charger fans kind of embarrassed themselves and made absolutely no progress with trying to get a stadium deal done or finding out what the NFL wants from San Diego to get a stadium deal done. All of these things happen within about a week. It's been awful. And so when I look at the trading deadline, I say the only thing that can happen here is something that absolutely breaks the heart of Charger fans. I'm not saying Phillip Rivers, and probably not Antonio Gates either, but it wouldn't surprise me, depending on how healthy he is this week, to see maybe Eric Weddle's name floated out there by somebody.
All right, Lee tweets in at us, the irony of John Gennaro and Ben Higgins calling for the coaching staff to change anything, yet remaining mum about the GM ownership. It's certainly Tom Telesco takes a lot of the blame here.
Tom Telesco takes a ton of the blame.
We just have a limited amount of time each week to discuss the problem.
And I know that guy because he was tweeting me after our podcast. I think it was last week when I was banging the table and screaming. And he said, that we had let the Spanos family off the hook and that the problem with the culture and the team all the way down was the Spanos family. And I don't know that I necessarily believe that's true. I think they kind of back off and let everyone else handle it. I just think the guys they've left in charge are not very good at handling it.
I think the problem, though, is at this point when the team is struggling, the coach is going to say, hey, we're going to keep working, we're going to try to fix it, because that's all he can do. The GM kind of in the same spot, unless he's going to make a change in the coaching staff. Hey, I hired these guys, I got to have faith in them until I don't.
Right.
But the owner can step in and say, they're the ones who can actually step in and say, hey, you know what, this isn't acceptable.
Right.
These guys are on a short leash, whatever, or, you can give them a vote of confidence, whatever. But show us that your hand is on the steering wheel of the ship and you're not heading straight into the iceberg and you're not paying attention. But because of the whole stadium thing, you don't hear from the Spanoses at all.
Well, and part of this is the confusion that's left after the stadium thing. Fans absolutely hate everyone with the last name of Spanos. Dean Spanos, who would be the one to come out and do the vote of confidence, no longer touches football operations. That's now John Spanos. And John Spanos, most fans don't know who he is, and I think he's pretty happy in that role. So I don't think he wants to come out and give the vote of confidence because now all of the vitriol gets pointed at him.
All right, Back in Tokyo tweets, the show would be more fun if Jose Cuervo was the third host.
I absolutely agree. If one day we do this not in the middle of a Monday, that will happen.
The Friday afternoon edition of Bolts Brown Bag.
One of these days.
We will have to do that some way. Do you want to give out the Bolts Brown Bagger of the game? I couldn't even pick someone. I picked Jason Verrett because
he had an okay game.
Well, I was excited about the matchup against Steve Smith, and there were some good moments, some good battles between the two. And then, of course, Steve Smith got hurt. And, the Chargers lost. So.
I would throw out the name Ryan Carruthers. Carruthers, I think
he had like 6-7 tackles,
He had 7 tackles. Yeah. Every time they tried to run in the middle of the line, he held them back. But really, the one guy who we haven't mentioned at all, except in a negative way, Malcolm Floyd had a great game. Malcolm Floyd was dominant. He had 92 yards, I think 2 touchdowns. Every time they needed a big play, he was running down the field getting the ball.
Yeah, Malcolm Floyd, he got some attention with the 2 touchdowns, which is why I didn't give him the Bolts Brown Bagger. Okay. But because he's Malcolm, I have no problem with that.
It's his last year. He's the nicest guy.
All right,
he's got to be on this team for his last year.
Before we bring in Ferris with the 3 questions, did we decide if anyone's getting traded tomorrow? Weddle, is he gone?
The only rumor that's out there is Donald Brown, and I refuse to believe that anyone wants that contract or that player.
He hasn't even made the active roster yet.
He was active for 1 game.
1 game.
1 game.
And he got released, and no one took him either.
Right.
They re-signed him.
Michael Gelkin tweeted out that when he was released, he had gotten interest from other teams, which begs the question, why didn't he just sign there?
I think it was Adam Schefter threw out from ESPN today, though, that the Steelers should trade for Eric Weddle. Now, I don't know if Eric Weddle is healthy enough to even be traded.
That was something, and that's what I mentioned a minute or 2 ago. But that was a story that I had heard 2 weeks ago, which was I think Mike Tomlin, after the Steelers played the Chargers, Mike Tomlin said Eric Weddle was the closest thing in the NFL to a Troy Polamalu. And people are like, oh, man, they're going to trade for Weddle. They're going to trade for Weddle. If he was healthy, I think absolutely you trade him. But if he's hurt, I don't know that you can.
All right, maybe the show would be more fun if this was Bengals brown bag with Skyline chili and Grater's ice cream. And
didn't you say Skyline chili was overrated?
It was horrible. It really was. I try to be nice to the people who like it, but it was not good. I was so excited to try it when I went for that playoff game, and I was just disappointed. But no one can be disappointed in Ferris's Bengals.
No, they're undefeated.
They won again.
They
came down to the last play. I thought, this is it. They're finally losing.
They look like the second best team in the league.
Ben, could you quickly remind us, what did John say about my Bengals?
They stink.
They stink.
They stink.
They stink.
By the way, he picked the Bengals on this week straight up to win.
John, in 1992.
Oh, here we go.
A great band penned these poignant lyrics.
Someone play the violins.
Quote.
Sad harp going on right now.
I saw the sign. And it opened up my eyes. I saw the sign, unquote. That great band was Swedish supergroup Ace of Base.
Great band.
Great band, yeah. So the Bengals, they have the #1 offense. They pretty much wrapped up the AFC North. It's over. Have you seen the sign on the Bengals? Have they opened up your eyes?
You're asking me if I no longer think the Bengals stink.
Yeah.
I would like to revise my statement.
Okay.
I take the 2 words Bengals stink. You can cross out Bengals. And there's 2 options you can write in there. Either Chargers stink if you want to go off topic, or I still believe Andy Dalton stinks. And Andy Dalton proved in this game that he still has the capacity to stink when the rest of the team is not playing well around him.
They went 57 minutes without a touchdown against the Steelers.
Yeah.
It's a long time to go.
But it's, as you like to say, it was a divisional game.
Usually close, yeah.
Close game. It was the Steelers were desperate. They needed that win. That's why they brought Roethlisberger back early.
You were nervous on the last play, though. Ball was in the air.
I was very nervous.
Head into the end zone.
I was very nervous.
The Bengals, right now, I'm willing to say the best team in the AFC is the Denver Broncos. Yeah. The Bengals are not far behind, and they're both.
Are the Patriots in this equation?
Oh man, okay, so they're fighting for 2 and 3. 2 and 3. I forget that a team that good exists. So Patriots, Broncos, and then a close third is the Bengals. But the Bengals and Broncos are very similar teams.
I'm actually going to go a step farther. I'm going to actually say that as a Bengals fan, I actually don't want them to get a first-round bye because I think that will screw them up mentally. I think they need to go in. If they have those 2 weeks off, they're just going to be sitting there. They're going to be thinking about it. Everyone's going to be.
You understand their history in Wild Card Weekend, right?
They lost to the Chargers. They
lost to the Chargers. They lost to the Jets. They lost to the Texans.
You know, it's going to be a really interesting. If you don't mind me looking ahead, it's going to be a really interesting playoff dynamic in the AFC this year because the difference between being the 5 seed and the 6 seed for the wild card is going to be huge. You got 3 undefeated teams.
Yeah.
The 6 seed will have to play either the Bengals, the Broncos, or the Patriots in the first round, whereas the 5th seed is probably going to get a very mediocre Indianapolis Colts team.
Likely.
Beatable in the first round. So you're really going to have a fight there. And right now it's if you can believe this, the Raiders at 5 at 4-3. And the Jets, who are now 6 at 4-3 because they lost to the Raiders. And those are the only other 2 teams with a winning record in the AFC other than the 3 undefeated teams.
Do you know Derek Carr has the 5th highest passer rating?
Chargers are only 2.5 games out of a playoff spot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's all.
2.5 games.
Don't let Philip Rivers and
If you want to go crazy, just 2.5 games out of a playoff spot.
And Ben, I just want to point this out, too, on your Ben's Best Bets, where you pick games against the spread. Last week, you picked in a pick'em,
I know.
You picked the Steelers, and when I called you out, this was your quote. You sent me this text. They're going to lose at some point. That was your quote.
And I'm going to be on the correct side when they do.
They are absolutely going to lose at some point.
I know.
So I'm getting the feeling you're just going to keep picking against them.
Exactly. Because I don't want to pick them and have them lose. That would really hurt me if I finally get on their bandwagon and then they lose. So you're probably glad.
They're 10-point favorites against the Browns. You're telling me you're going to pick the Browns?
I may to cover the spread. Divisional game, keep it close. Browns aren't bad.
I'd absolutely pick the Browns to cover that spread.
They're going to cover it. No doubt. All right, get to the real question.
First real question. What happened in that Saints-Giants game? 13 touchdowns total.
Flag football.
Flag football? No, because you can actually take flags off.
That's right. They have to stop running.
Yeah, they have to stop running. I think it was the NFL's first foray into what are those things when Tupac came back to life? He was on stage.
Holograms.
Holograms. Hologram defenses. Because they couldn't tackle. They couldn't touch the ball. I mean, at one point in this game, Drew Brees and Eli Manning had thrown 9 touchdowns combined and had 7 incompletions combined.
I mean, this is the crazy thing about an NFL game, though. You had 14 touchdowns, 49-49, and the game is decided on a face mask penalty by the punter after a fumble, which couldn't have even been advanced anyway after it was picked up. And that's what put the Saints in position for Kai Forbath to kick the field goal.
God
the
bless
only
the NFL.
field goal of the game. And that's what's decided by, it was really not even a face mask. It was like his hand, the punter's hand brushed against the hand of the guy who recovered the fumble on the punt. I mean, what a silly, stupid way to end a game that had been 49-49 up to that point.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. So you're not saying it wasn't like, here was Drew Brees coming back.
No,
it wasn't him at all.
No.
It wasn't.
No.
If they had any sense of history, they would have missed the field goal, so Brees could have thrown another, 80 yards and a touchdown in overtime to set all the NFL records.
Exactly.
Because he was close to Norm Van Brocklin, and he tied the touchdown record. All right, question number 2.
Okay. So, very sad yesterday, Steve Smith injured out for the season. I've always kind of looked at him. I always thought he was kind of the Allen Iverson of the NFL. He was misunderstood. He never got his due.
I think that's a good comparison, actually.
Yeah. So
it's an okay comparison.
If this is really the end of his career, they're saying he might come back, but he's 36 years old. Where is his place in football history?
Well, I think his last catch right before the one in which he got injured, CBS even brought up and said that he was now 10th in receiving yards all time.
I didn't realize that he was that high.
He's
on the
10th in receiving yards, 28th in touchdowns.
Right, and you got to figure the first few years of his career, he was not much of a receiver. He was just a kick returner, punt returner, and a great one. So, I mean, total yards, he's got to be way up there. I'd put him as a top 10 receiver might be pushing it a little bit, but top 15, top 20 receiver all time.
If that's true, then you got to say he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I'm going to say,
Hall of Famer?
I think he's a Hall of Famer.
Here's the quarterbacks that threw to him, like, in his career. Jake Delhomme. Vinny Testaverde. Jimmy Clausen. And then he had 3 seasons of Cam Newton, but young Cam Newton.
And now Joe Flacco.
Yeah. So he did that with really subpar.
Underrated. Underrated for sure.
Yeah. I mean, he's the guy that everyone thought Mike Wallace would turn into, and he never did. There's a couple other guys like that, small, speedy guys. Percy Harvin. People looked at and said, "Oh,
he also used to fight with his own teammates in Carolina, right?"
Look, he's a fiery guy. That's why he's misunderstood, like Allen Iverson. He's actually kind of a smaller Des Bryant that way. Yeah. But yeah, I think he's definitely a Hall of Famer.
All right, question number 3.
Question number 3. So, in the spirit of we're going to trade up for Melvin Gordon, even though we could have got him anyway at number 17. Give me your worst draft decision of all time, not named Ryan Leaf.
I mean, Ryan Leaf is such an easy call for a Chargers fan.
Absolutely.
So I decided to look into it a little bit, and here's what I decided. The Rams, 1996, not only taking Lawrence Phillips with the 6th overall pick, but then trading away future Hall of Famer Jerome Bettis to clear the roster space for Lawrence Phillips, who most recently killed his cellmate in jail. That was a bad draft day decision.
Wow.
That was a bad move.
Giving away Jerome Bettis.
That's hard. That's hard to pick. And I was gonna go with drafting Ray Caruth so high, but I didn't want both of these picks to be murder. So I'm gonna go with Tebow, a man who will probably never murder anybody. Tebow with the 20.
He did win him a playoff game
with the 25th overall pick. Maybe
really
maybe he's not in the league anymore.
No, he was terrible. I mean, no first-round pick exits the league as fast as Tim Tebow did.
No, exactly.
Ever. I mean, Ryan Leaf was around for
I'm sure Ryan Leaf
7 years.
Here's the thing, though. There's been a Tebow bias. You're telling me that there's not. Look at some of these backup quarterbacks. You're telling me you wouldn't rather have Tim Tebow than some of these guys?
He can't even complete 50% of his passes. I mean, this is the NFL.
Yeah, he's a quarterback who can't complete passes. You know what he is? He's a big, strong, muscly Eric Crouch. If you remember that name, the Heisman-winning quarterback from Nebraska, who got to the league, they immediately could tell at the combine that he had no accuracy, and they went, "Why don't you go try and learn how to play wide receiver because quarterback's just not for you."
I'm going to give you guys a name. Charles Rogers, number 2 overall pick.
Detroit Lions?
Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that was a bad one.
He had 15 games, 36 catches, 440 yards. He was taken one pick ahead of Andre Johnson.
See, that splits the vote, though, because him and Mike Williams happened in successive years, both by the Detroit Lions, by the same GM in the first round, and they were equally awful forever.
Yeah.
All right, go away and stare at the AFC North standings a little bit. I know that's what you want to do anyway, so enjoy your Cincinnati Bengals. Let's look ahead to the Chicago Bears. Monday Night Football. We'll be back, obviously, before the game. But
right.
To next week, we're going to do kind of the mid-season review.
Okay.
Get the grade cards back. The paint is dry now this time.
It's still on the bottom of my computer.
Yeah,
Hold on.
from the last time I painted all the grades.
There's still paint all over the bottom of my computer.
But we'll bring the grade letters back and do the first half of the season. But the Bears are coming to town next week. I expect a pretty Bear-friendly crowd at Qualcomm Stadium. There's a lot of Chicago transplants around here.
Well, and what the Chargers fans have no need to go to the games anymore. Why would they go to a game? Why would you go to this game? As a fan, would you go to this game? If someone said,
I love Monday Night Football.
Free tickets, you're going.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I love Monday Night Football.
It's fun.
Although I like part of the reason I like it is because you get the music and the TV and everything.
Yeah,
so maybe being there's, I don't know.
Being there's
cool.
This
is a game. If they're going to win a game the rest of the season, this should be the one. The Bears are not good. They could be missing Matt Forte. Eddie Royal also got hurt in a loss to the Vikings yesterday.
If this isn't
and Jay Cutler's just so easy to hate. I mean, the old Rivers Cutler thing.
Yeah, I miss that.
I mean, there's some intrigue to the game for me next week, and I really do think if the Chargers are going to win at all, it should be this one.
Right, and they have the Jaguars after the bye or the week after the bye?
They get Kansas City the week after the bye, which is the one that will be flexed, and then at Jacksonville. Yeah.
So, I mean, they could win 2 of their next 3 games, and I'm sure Mike McCoy and Phillip Rivers would be really stoked about that. But these are 2 really bad teams. All I'm interested in on Monday is, can the Chargers beat a really bad team? Because as bad as the Ravens were at 1-6, I don't think they were really bad. I don't think they were the doldrums of the NFL.
No.
And the Bears are there. And so if they can't beat the Bears on Monday, then the only game they have a chance of winning the rest of the year will be the Jaguars, and you can't take solace in that.
At the very least, the Chargers can get sour-faced Cutler out on the field again. Just
a couple picks.
Remind us of the good old days when the Chargers were actually beating the Denver Broncos like a drum consistently.
Well, and you said
that was fun.
It was, and you said in our podcast, you made it a point to say, the Chargers just never get turnovers anymore. Never. It's been years. And what used to always help their numbers was playing Jay Cutler. They could rely on him for 2 or 3 turnovers a game. So maybe this is the game where their turnover numbers look a little bit better by the end of it.
I was looking ahead. December 5th, the Broncos are going to come to town.
Okay.
I don't think they'll still be undefeated. They play the Patriots the week before that. But that's basically, is that going to be the Super Bowl for the Chargers? If the Broncos were undefeated, that would be like the Super Bowl for the Chargers this year, to see if they could at least knock off the Broncos at home.
Probably, but they're so outmatched.
It seems like it. Remember, was it 2005? They missed the playoffs, but they beat the 13-0 Colts on the road that year.
Yeah.
I don't know. I keep getting the sense of that for that game coming up against the Broncos. But
could be.
I don't know. The Patriots will beat the Broncos, right?
Yeah, they will, but you also have more faith in the Chargers than I do. I mean, that Broncos defense is historic right now.
It is. It was. I mean, I was surprised last night. I thought, okay, Aaron Rodgers, and Peyton Manning still didn't throw a touchdown pass.
Nope.
He now has 7 touchdown passes and 11 interceptions this year.
They don't need them.
And they're 7-0, and they don't need them at all.
They are the 2001 Baltimore Ravens right now.
The Chargers need help badly.
A lot of help.
That's where we wrap it up. We do have some poll results in. The question was, if you've forgotten, how should the Chargers approach the second half of the season? Try to pull off the miracle, run the table to make the playoffs.
Don't agree with that.
Focus on the future, develop the young players.
I mean, they're doing that anyway.
Or shop for condos in L.A. We've got 45% want to focus on the future.
Okay.
45% think they should shop for condos in L.A.
That's also focusing on the future.
10% say just go for the miracle.
Go for the miracle.
Hey, they were 4-8 one year, and they made the playoffs.
Look, there's no reason for Antonio Gates, Malcolm Floyd, Eric Weddle, Phillip Rivers, Mike McCoy. There's no reason for them to look to the future in San Diego because most of them don't have a future in San Diego. They have to go for it. So we're just along for the ride and hope that it turns out well.
John, as always, thanks for coming in again.
Thanks for having me.
Have a fun talking with you every Monday.
Yeah.
All right, this has been another edition of Bolt's Brown Bag only at 10news.com, our weekly Chargers web show. We'll talk to you next week.